Hello, I'm Msgr. Jim Lisante. Today on Personally Speaking, I'll be joined by Tony Award-nominated stage, film, and television actor Andrew Rannells. Andrew stars in the Netflix film The Prom, opposite Meryl Streep and James Cordon. Please stay with us. Hello and welcome to Personally Speaking. I'm your host, Msgr. Jim Lisante, and actor Andrew Rannells joins me now. Andrew was most recently seen in Ryan Murphy's Netflix adaptation of The Boys in the Band opposite Jim Parsons, Zachary Quinto, and Matt Bomer, as well as Tuck Watkins. He also stars in the Showtime series Black Monday, and is best known for his role as Elijah in the HBO series Girls. Andrew is well known for his work on stage, having starred a number of acclaimed Broadway shows. He made his Broadway debut in Hairspray, played the role of Bob Gaudio in the national tour of Jersey Boys, and originated the role of Elder Price in the Book of Mormon, which earned him a Tony nomination. Andrew also played the role of King George III in the acclaimed Hamilton, and he was in the Broadway revival of Falsettos, which earned him a second Tony nomination. On the big screen, Andrew can be seen in films such as A Simple Favor, Why Him, and The Intern. He's also written a book called Too Much Is Not Enough, a memoir of fumbling toward adulthood. Andrew currently stars in the Netflix feature The Prom, a film version of the Tony-nominated musical alongside Meryl Streep, Nicole Kidman, and James Cordon. And he's here to talk to us today about that film, as well as to talk about his life, his career, and the values that matter the most to him. Joining me now, I'm very pleased to welcome to Personally Speaking, the actor Andrew Rannells. Tell me about Rannells. What kind of name is that?
Well, it's actually Rannells.
Rannells.
The long A. Rannells.
Okay. Rannells. Got it.
Rannells. It is Irish. It is an Irish name. Yeah.
But you're a blend, right?
I'm sorry?
You're a blend, right?
I'm a blend. I am Irish and Polish.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
Very Catholic, you know?
Very Catholic, very hardworking.
That's right. Great people. We'll
Yes.
talk about that some more later on. But I went to see the Prom on Broadway, loved it, made me laugh, made me cry. How is the movie put out by Netflix going to be as an experience? Is it opened up? Is it different? Am I going to enjoy the same things? Tell us about the Prom.
I think you'll enjoy the same things. You know, it's a very uplifting story about this girl in the Midwest in Indiana who is denied access to her senior prom because she's a lesbian and she wants to take her girlfriend, and the PTA decides that that's not allowed. And this group of four very narcissistic Broadway actors hear about this on Twitter, and they decide to go to Indiana to save her. And what they quickly learn is that she doesn't really need saving, but they think that they can solve all of her problems, and in fact, she ends up solving a lot of theirs. Right. So it's just a really great story and a fun time. The music is fantastic. I mean, it's a big sort of old-fashioned movie musical, right, which is really exciting. And I've never gotten to be a part of anything quite like that, even though I've done a lot of musicals. I've never done one on film. So thank you, Ryan Murphy, for making all of this happen, because it really is just a big, splashy, fun musical that I hope that, you know, it comes out December 11th in time for the holidays. So I hope that people, you know, families enjoy it. It's one of those, it's a movie that, you know, works on a lot of different levels. So you can watch it with your kids, but I think as an adult, you can also really enjoy it, because there's storylines on every level.
Okay, Andrew, that's a perfect segue. A show like ours, Personally Speaking, is listened to by tons of parents around the country. A lot of them Catholic, not all. I mention that because having grown up yourself with some of what the Prom is all about, what are parents supposed to do when their kid says, "This is what I think I may be." We had that, you probably know Andy Mantis on not too long ago. And Andy said, I'm tired of people saying parents should be about acceptance or tolerance. He said, those have a whiff of condescension. I'm looking for parents who, he said, embrace their children when they decide to tell them that this is part of their identity. You've been through this. You've walked through this. Is there a right or wrong way to handle it?
Is there a right or wrong way? I don't know. I mean, yes, the wrong way is to, the wrong way is to, deny your child the love that you already have for them. Right. I hear these heartbreaking stories about kids being kicked out of their homes after they come out. And, that's, and that still happens. I remember, hearing about that in the 90s when I was thinking about coming out and, was terrified, even though I knew my parents loved me, but there was always a little bit in the back of my mind that I was like, but what if they reject me? So I guess rejection is the wrong way. My mom and my dad both sort of had two different approaches. My mother, when I came out to my mother, she said, like, no surprise. She was not surprised at all. Okay. My father, on the other hand, he was like, well, I love you very much. I don't believe you need to be this way, but if you want to be this way, I love you. And it really stung because obviously I wasn't choosing to be gay. This is just the way that I was born. But when I went away to college, I came back for Christmas and my dad pulled me aside and he said, I've been thinking about it and you were born this way. Yeah. And I was wrong. And he didn't, necessarily apologize, but he understood that obviously this is not something that you choose to do or you are made into a gay person. You're born that way. And he said, he was like, when you were 5 years old and you wanted to be a solid gold dancer, I knew there was something special about you. Okay. So he had to admit, he was like, no, this is not something that you choose. This is just it's just your genetic makeup, that's who you are.
Andrew, a lot of parents think that when a guy like you gets into acting, it's a wonderful avocation, but they'd rather you have a 9-to-5 job with a steady paycheck and a pension. Sure. Your parents, their response to you choosing to embrace a life in the arts was?
Well, they were sort of hands off. When I was doing theater, I did, a lot of theater in Omaha and a lot of like local TV commercials and things like that. And they would, drive me there, but then just sort of like drop me off. And they weren't super involved in the process. And then when I decided to go to college, and study acting in New York, they were supportive, but they also, my parents didn't pay for school for any of us. There's 5 kids and they made the decision that we're not going to pay for college for you kids. So it's up to you to get scholarships and do that. So I got, a full ride to go to this school in New York. And they just sort of, they came to New York, they dropped me off, they wished me luck. I mean, it was kind of, they didn't know what to say. And later, as I started to work then professionally, my mother admitted to me, she was like, we just didn't know what to say. We didn't know, we couldn't help you. There was nothing, they didn't know anything about the business or the world that I was getting into. And so it wasn't for lack of interest. It was just that they were kind of, out of their depths, that they didn't know what to say to a kid who wanted to be an actor. So it was, in some ways it was good. It made me very resilient and it made me, I think, much stronger and I think more driven, because a lot of my friends' parents are very involved in their careers, and it's that's annoying in a different way. I certainly don't need my mother asking me about callbacks or like what's happening with that. So she still to this day is like, she's kind of, hands off. Yeah.
Now, for people who don't know Andrew well, you may not know that he could be a poster boy. This is the Catholic channel we're on. He could be the poster boy for Catholic education. Get this. He goes to Our Lady of Lourdes Grammar School. I'm the pastor of Our Lady of Lourdes Parish on Long Island, by the way.
Oh, so, get out.
How about that? He goes to Creighton High School, which is all boys Catholic. And then when he comes to New York for a while, he's going to Marymount College.
Yeah.
Okay, now, without blowing us all apart, the the good part of Catholic education for you was?
Well, Creighton Prep was the name of my high school. Well, going back to grade school, the best thing about that grade school, and it's, I don't know, I sort of took it for granted. It was kindergarten through 8th grade. I was with the same kids that entire time. The group was about 22 kids. I felt very safe, very seen and heard, and that was great because it was a small group of kids and we were all friends. I mean, and everybody sort of, there were times where, this is a terrible thing to say, but like we sort of took turns bullying each other, but there was no like solid underdog. It was like everybody just sort of like picked on each other in this weird way because we all knew each other so well. High school was a sort of a different situation. It was a much larger school. I think at the time there was a little over 1,000 boys in that school. So it was a little easier to get lost in the crowd, but it was a great education. And it took a while for me to find my footing in a group that big though. Freshman year and even most of sophomore year, like I just didn't know what I was doing. Like it was easy to sort of get lost in the mix. But then, you find sort of your group of friends and you figure out sort of who you can trust. And so that was, I think my those experiences in terms of Catholic school were great. I guess the downside to it would just be sort of the judgment that particularly as a gay kid that not that it was talked about a lot, but that it did creep in. And just sort of the, especially in the 80s and the 90s, there was a lot of stigma around being gay. And, I remember a priest saying it like out loud at a mass that like in a group of 1,000 teenage boys, he said that he was like, well, certainly there are no gay boys at Creighton Prep. And I was like, well, do the numbers, man. Like 1,000 boys in here, like there's going to be a lot that are gay. But there was a big denial about that. So that was tough.
Aside from starring in The Prom, Andrew has also written last year a really powerful, wonderful book called Too Much Is Not Enough. I love that I read it all in one sitting. But one of the troubling things for me, because I do this for a living, is I had never known anybody who had ever been violated in confession. Andrew shares that he was. Like, here's my question for you, Andrew. That priest who was a jerk to you, did you forgive him?
Did I forgive him? I didn't really make space for forgiveness for that. It was really hard. I mean, I was in confession and I was about to confess that I was, having these feelings and in fact was in a very predatory relationship with an older man. And I was feeling very trapped. And I went to this priest who I really trusted. And his response was to put his tongue in my mouth. That was his response to that. And he did it multiple times. And it was really hard. It was really, it shook I think that's a big reason why I just rejected the Catholic Church for a long time, was because I was like, I went to the place that was supposed to be safest and he abused it. So it was really hard. So do I forgive him? I suppose on a certain level, I forgive him just for my own sake, just to move forward. But it was an extreme abuse of power. And if he did it to me, I can only assume that he did it to others.
Happily, Andrew, as you know, recently Pope Francis came out supporting civil unions. Step in the right direction, no doubt about it. But I was struck when you go online at the amazing amount of vile hatred he got for daring to say such a thing. When you run into that kind of invincible ignorance, what's your response?
I've been very fortunate that I haven't personally run into it in quite some time, but I also live in a little bit of a bubble. I'm in New York or Los Angeles, and I work in show business. Right. And so it's a pretty safe space to be who you are. But, when I hear stories about people really being vilified for just being who they are, I mean, it just breaks my heart that that they're still, because when you really break it down, who is it? How does that affect you? How does that affect you? If I want to marry my boyfriend, how does that take anything away from you?
Yeah.
What does that change? And it's really, I guess that's the hardest thing to sort of wrap my head around, is that I don't understand why people insert themselves in others' lives in that way, particularly when it's not even to be helpful. It's just to judge.
Yeah.
It's just to judge. And that's really hard.
You know, one of the objections sometimes conservative Catholics will give me, not just Catholics, Baptists, others too, will be,
Sure.
well, you know, it's one thing for them to find each other, but you certainly can't trust them with children. Now, as chance would have it, as chance would have it, you're involved with a man who made that decision to have his children.
Yeah.
What do you think about those kids? Are they going to grow up because of this with an even more open mind?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And Tuck is a completely devoted father in a way that, you know, I love my dad very much, but even though he was around a lot, he was sort of absent. You know, he was one of those very Midwestern dads from grew up in the, 40s and 50s, who just, like, dad came home and read the newspaper and didn't really interact with us very much.
Yeah.
And Tuck is, just, does everything with those kids and loves those kids. And I think that those so much, and those kids, I think, really feel that and know that. And, the fact that we're together, I don't know, the conversations about his sexuality or what it means to be gay are, kids are very, I think, naturally understanding about those things.
Mm-hmm.
And, they don't have any questions. They don't have any preconceived notions. So they just grow up knowing that, like, some men marry men, some men marry women, some women marry women. And, like, that's just the way the world works. Yeah. And it's really beautiful to see. And it was, with my own nieces and nephews, with them growing up with me as their uncle, they just sort of understood that is an aspect of the world we live in. And it wasn't something they needed to be taught or, figure out or have to understand in some specific way. They just know that that's the way that it works, and they're very accepting of it. So I think kids are naturally very understanding and loving, in a way that I don't know when we lose that as adults, but somewhere along the line you lose it.
Andrew,
it's, not to bring it back to musical theater.
Yeah.
I always like to. There's Rodgers and Hammerstein wrote that amazing song in South Pacific called "You Have to Be Carefully Taught" about racism, and that's really true. Like, if the people who grow up to be bigoted, it's because they were taught to be bigoted. Yeah. And who taught them? Their parents. Mm-hmm. And the people around them, and that's how that develops, unfortunately.
I don't know if you've been to a baptism lately, but one of the things we do is we bless the kids' ears and mouth, and we say, I bless your ears in the hope that you'll hear the goodness of God. And I'm not just talking about in church; I'm talking about from your family, because they're the first ones to teach you the bad stuff.
Yeah, sure.
If they're going to learn it anywhere in the world, but they don't have to learn it at home, hopefully. Rory O'Malley was a guest a couple of years ago.
Rory.
Wonderful Rory. We love Rory. He's another dad. But I mention it because in talking about you, he said, he's so funny and he's so smart. And I mention that because I wondered, sometimes it seems to me, when I've known gay kids especially, they are funny and they are smart, but it's a way of protecting themselves. Did humor come in handy for you?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think that naturally, my family has sort of a inherently very dark sense of humor. I think that comes from from both my parents, really. And I don't know where that developed from, but that's just, it's, I remember my dad, teaching us from a very young age that, like, if you're going to interrupt someone, especially at the dinner table, it better be funny. Yeah. Like, if you're going to cut in, it better be good. It better be good. So I think we all had to develop that sense of humor that, like, we all had our eyes on, how to outwit each other. But yeah, definitely. I think that, I think gay people, queer people, do develop a sort of a sharper sense of humor, I think, sometimes as protection and mm-hmm. sometimes, to deflect, and sometimes to be liked. I was very fortunate. So in my tiny grade school, Our Lady of Lourdes, I had two best friends who were both gay. and grew up to be gay men. And it was funny that in a group that small in Omaha, Nebraska, of 22 kids, there were 3 little gay boys.
Oh my God. They're
and we
everywhere.
all found each other. They all found each other. And yeah, we would have lip sync contests and all sorts of things. It was very fun. It was very fun. So I'm very fortunate for that.
You know, the prom for our listeners around the country is certainly about accepting yourself. So, Andrew, I want to talk about 2 dimensions of accepting yourself. Even though you are one of the most busy working actors around, you have to have, in all the years you've been doing this, gone through the experience of, I was perfect for a part, I didn't get it. How does Andrew deal with rejection?
I decided when I turned 30 that I was going to keep my eyes on my own paper, because I spent all of my 20s being jealous of other people.
Yeah.
And I wasted a lot of energy being jealous of what other people had. And when I turned 30, I was in Jersey Boys in Toronto. We had just opened Jersey Boys in Toronto. And I felt like, you know, I do this well. I do what I do well.
Yeah.
It's not going to be right for everything. But there's a lot of jobs to go around, and there's a lot of opportunities for people. And that everybody, when you stick around long enough in this business, everybody gets to have their moment, and that doesn't take away from yours. And it's sometimes hard to remember, but you know, when I came back to New York after doing Jersey Boys, I did Jersey Boys for a while on Broadway, and then shortly after was cast in the Book of Mormon. And I think the only reason that I was cast in the Book of Mormon was because I went in, I wasn't nervous. I just decided that I do what I do. And if you like what I do, then I'm right for your job. If you don't like what I do, thank you very much for your time.
Yeah, right.
But I went in and I felt very confident about, like, this is the way that I do it. If you like it, thanks for having me. And turns out Trey Parker, a fellow Midwesterner, he liked it. He liked what I did. So I was.
Self-acceptance. All right. Now,
Yes.
the other part of that, I've seen you in falsettos, and I've seen you in The Boys in the Band, and you still have the looks thing and the youth thing going for you. But here's the deal for our listeners around the country. Sooner or later, we all go through this experience, Andrew, of getting older. Now, I mentioned that because...
How dare you?
I'm sorry. In this world where we worship youth and looks, how well does Andrew say, I'm not afraid of the years ahead. I'm not afraid of aging.
I'm not afraid of aging so much. I know it's sort of the natural progression of things.
Right.
And you know, as an actor, I think it's interesting that you grow into different types. You grow into different roles, and there is something exciting about that. And I wouldn't want to go back. I wouldn't want to go back to playing Link Larkin in Hairspray. Like, it's more fun to get to be an adult. And I think the older you get, you know, hopefully the opportunity to, and there's more material to play sort of richer, deeper people. So I sort of look forward to it. And then, you know, on a personal level, my dad died at 61. So, which is, you know, pretty young. And so I'm just very grateful to be, you know, living. And I think when he died, I was 22. And I think that really put in perspective how valuable time is. So I certainly don't want to wish anything away or wish I was someplace that I'm not.
This may be a segue into a quasi-spiritual question, but Brian Darcy James, when he was on, talked about his father dying in his 40s. And the question I asked him, he said, yes, he does. He talks to his father. He believes in the afterlife. What about yourself? Is there a sense of life beyond this life? Or do you talk to Dad?
I think about him a lot. I think about him a lot. Yeah. And I think about my grandmother a lot. I think about, you know, there are, and I, you know, anytime I have any sort of, you know, momentous moment in my life of, you know, an opening night or some award show or something, like, I wish that he could see it. I wish that he was there. I hope that he knows that, that, you know, things are going well. Because when he died, I was really like a really struggling actor. So I just want to show him, like, no, it worked out. Everything's okay. So I don't know if I believe that we keep people with us. I think that as long as you keep them, you know, if they're in your heart, I feel like that keeps them alive in some way. Yeah.
I promise, last question. For our
Yeah,
listeners
sure.
around the country who I want to go see the prom,
Yes. Well,
what are
it'll
you
be in your
hoping?
home.
What are you hoping that they're going to see?
Well, the great thing about it, it will be, December 11th. It'll be on Netflix. You can watch it
Okay.
from the comfort of your home.
Right.
It's wonderful. So I think that as I said, it works on a lot of levels. I think that,
Hmm.
you can watch it with your whole family. And I think that it sounds cheesy, but there is something in there for everyone, for like
Yeah.
every age group. I hope that the people just feel good when they watch it. I think that we set out to make a film about joy and acceptance, and I think when I watched it and I sort of forgot that I was in it, I really did. You finish it and you do have a sense of joy. There's a lightness to it. There's a love to it, and I hope that when people that last number is over, that people watch it and they walk away smiling and feeling good.
Andrew, I've been doing interviews for a long time. The first one was with the film director Frank Capra many years ago.
Sure.
It's a Wonderful Life, right? And
Yeah, yeah.
I mentioned that because doing so many of these, you get used to people who have canned answers, kind of all formulated ahead of time. You think through your answer. You're open-minded. You're delightful. And thank you so
Oh,
much for sharing
that's so nice of
your
you.
thoughts and your feelings with us on Personally Speaking. Let's go sell 1 million tickets. Everyone watching and listening, please
Yes,
go
tune
see The
in.
Prom. Andrew, thank you for your time. You're a great
Thank
man.
you for having me.
As we end today's program, I want to thank all of you for being with us. If you have any questions or comments about the show, you can send them to me through my website, which is www.closeencountertv.com. All one word, closeencountertv.com. To listen to our Personally Speaking podcast with some of our most recent shows, please go to YouTube and search under Personally Speaking with Msgr. Jim Lisante and subscribe. Personally Speaking is also available as a podcast on Apple Podcasts, iHeart, and Spotify. You can also listen to past episodes by going to www.ollmp.org, ollmp.org, and you get not only recent shows, but also Msgr. Jim's weekly homilies. I'm privileged to serve as host and executive producer of Personally Speaking. Our producer is Lisa Jadovitz, and thank you all so much for being with us. We'll be with you again next time on Personally Speaking.